We are live on the HawksZone Rundown. We are joined by Bill and Keith from the Seahawks Playbook podcast. We've had these guys on a few times on the show, and we're excited to have them back because we're going to get into a lot of things. There's been some interesting stuff coming up, but we want to talk about the running game. You know, how does this running back room look? Can these guys get the running game going again? We're going to look at this division as a whole and kind of break down each team a little bit and go on and see how these guys can compete for the division and how the schedule is going to play a factor for the Seahawks this year. We're going to break that down with Bill and Keith as well and get into a whole lot more. Guys, we're live here, so flood the comments and questions. And also, if you guys are watching and you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, go down, hit the sub button, share the videos, like the videos. So on the other side, I think Keith will be joining us in a bit, but Bill Ofsted's going to join us right on the other side.
So y'all can sit here and ask me all the questions y'all want to.
Don't you ever talk about me!
Yeah, let's go. It's go time, baby.
Here comes Gino, steps up, takes that shot to the end zone. It is Metcalf, 20.
I'm just about that action, boss.
You about to go get it. You just like to do it.
That's what it is.
Off speed.
Nobody in the world can do it.
Are you kidding me? Trying to do that. Pass is caught back in. Jackson Smith is jigged on. The circus music rolls in. Throw it forward. Oh my goodness, he caught it. By Leonard Williams.
This is the HawksZone Rundown with your hosts, Ryan and Bryce.
Guys, welcome back to the show. Joining us from the Seahawks Playbook is Bill Ofsted. Bill, we appreciate you coming on and talking Hawks with us today.
Oh, man, it's great to be here, Ryan. Thank you. Good to see you, Bryce. It's good to talk Seahawks football with you guys. Been on in the past. It's always been a great conversation, and definitely looking forward to this for sure.
Yeah, no, for sure. Hey, let's get right into it. So, obviously we talked before we came on air here and about the draft and how the Seahawks have dealt with this offseason in a lot of positions, and pretty excited about going into camp and then, Seahawks football and getting the season going. But real quick, before we get into some of that, just the division as a whole and what you've seen, what's happening with the other teams in our division. Obviously, the big news with the Niners bringing back their defensive coach, but also signing Purdy to the big deal. What are your thoughts on that? And just overall, the Rams are the Rams and still seem to, no matter what happens, compete. And Matthew Stafford still chugging along there. So what are your overall thoughts with the division there?
Yeah, well, I will say this. My personal thoughts don't align with kind of the national punditry out there. You look at ESPN, you look at NFL Channel, all that kind of stuff. They're definitely higher on the Rams. They're definitely higher on San Francisco. San Francisco wins 6 games last year, and they're projected to win 11 or 12 and be in competition to take the division again. And they signed Brock Purdy to that big contract, but in order to do so, they had to move off of quite a few different players that were up for contract this season. And personally, I believe that their roster is less than it was last year. And they're going to be asked to do the same thing this year with less around them. As far as the Rams are concerned, I think they've proven over and over again me being incorrect about them, which means that I look at their roster and I think, well, it's okay, but they've got some holes, they've got some deficiencies, but every year Sean McVay gets them ready to compete and they're there at the end of the year. And then the Cardinals, they seem to be a pretty decent regular season game. Gannon's got those guys playing hard. I will give them that. They've had some great off season with free agency and the draft the last couple of years with Austin Fort there at the general manager spot. But the team always seems to fall short, and I think they will until Kyler Murray's not there anymore. I'm not a huge believer in him. I wasn't a believer until he got his ACL. He got the ACL. He worked really hard. He got the team behind him. He showed that he could be a leader, and and the performance on the field just didn't match up with that. So they're kind of stuck probably another season or so before they can kind of get out of that contract. And I think that they will move on, because I'm not sure if he's the guy that's going to get them over the hump. They've got a pretty decent roster. You take a look at their defensive line; it's improved. The back end's a little suspect, yeah, but the offense has got some weapons, and we'll find out. Now, as far as where the Seahawks fit into that equation, let's talk about it.
Yeah, for me, like Bill, when I look at the Seahawks in this division, I think it's closer for them to take it than it has been maybe in the past. I think there's a lot of things that line up favorably for Seattle this year. You know, you've got obviously San Francisco's kind of in a soft rebuild, I guess we could call it, or retooling, something that we've used up here a lot of the time. Like they're trying to now, after paying Brock Purdy, they've paid Fred Warner. How do we construct this team going forward? And it's going to be a big tell now that you're not paying Purdy the least amount to start in the NFL as a quarterback. And, you know, how does Robert Saleh fit back into that? How does he come into this equation and revamp this defense? They took a lot of defensive players in the draft, really gave him a lot to work with, and hopes that he can get this defense playing back to the level it was. I'm with you on the Cardinals. I think they'll be better. I think this whole division as a whole is going to be tough game in and game out for everybody. But I think it does come down.
Oh, no question.
Yeah, it does come down to Kyler Murray. And I'm kind of in the same boat as you, where I think they'll be better off once he's gone and they can go in a different direction at that spot. I do think that they, you know, if for me, if I was looking at in the way like the national pundits have kind of put it, I almost see the 49ers and Cardinals fighting for third and fourth in this division this year more than they're fighting for first. And I think the Rams are still the favorite to win it. Like,
me too.
Sean McVay doesn't have Matthew Stafford there. And Matthew Stafford, you know, yes, he's getting older, and I think the decline is coming, and it's going to come rather rapidly. I still think this year he's still going to be this team's going to be a very viable threat. That young defense, Verse and Fisk and those guys are going to cause problems. But I do look at what Seattle did with the draft and even through free agency, and I think they took more steps, and people may disagree with me, more steps to closing that gap than they did of staying in the status quo or taking steps back from competing for a division title.
Yeah. And
I think I'll disagree with you slightly on just one real quick second, Ryan. On the Rams. It's like the Rams had 10 wins last year. The Seahawks had 10 wins. The Rams needed the fifth tiebreaker to get into the playoffs. They came on at the end of the year. Seattle fell off just enough, right? And automatically we're handing this division to the Rams, or not automatically, but they're favored in this division, but primarily on the back of Matthew Stafford. I would argue that Seattle did much more to improve their team overall than the Rams did this offseason. And I would say that for me tips the scales, and you can argue about where Sam Darnold is, and we can have that conversation, but all things being equal, I think Seattle has a slightly better roster at this point. And we can talk about this too, I really like the way that Mike McDonald attacked the Rams offense this last season. I like the way that he attacked the 49ers and the Cardinals. We finally owned the division, I think, on the defensive side of the ball for the first time in a long time. And I don't see that dropping off at all. In fact, I could argue easily that we're going to even be better this year.
Yeah, and I look at the the point with the division. I mean, you know, owning the Cardinals, finally getting a win against the Niners, and I don't know where the huge jump comes from either with the Niners. I mean, you know, I agree with Bryce. Third and fourth, I really see. You know, it's the Sean McVay factor for me that just keeps them going, and I think we talk about Mike McDonald and this new offensive coordinator with Kubiak and Ryan Grubb out the door gives you more confidence there. That, to me, those are the kind of the keys right there. You know, Bill, you mentioned before we came on, you know, what you watch a lot of film with the New Orleans offense, and you're excited what you're seeing and how this is going to implement into our offense. That's got to give you the ultimate confidence to kind of keep going. And now with Mike having a full year opening up his playbook, and we saw that expand as the year went on, and this defense coming on. And like we said, if this now defense can become what we think it is, now, now Mike can really start opening up and dominating, the McVay offense and all this stuff. So that gives me confidence going in as far as how we can not fall off and just keep even adding to potentially dominating this division. And I agree with both you guys. Kyler's like, he's a fun athletic guy, but I don't see the leadership there. I don't see him taking this team over the top. I like Gannon, but for me, I see the Hawks really being right there, and I love what they did in the offseason. I feel like they hit on all points. Are there some holes? Sure, like every roster, but I'm this was a really A minus off season for me. Like it was good, man. So I'm really confident going into this season, competing with these teams in the division. Really.
So I want to go back to Bill's kind of point there. We were talking just about Darnold and Stafford and stuff, and kind of dive into that a little bit. I think that's where, for me, the edge still goes to the Rams, is the fact that, and don't get me wrong, I have a lot of faith that Sam Darnold can still potentially grow on what he did last year with Minnesota. I still have to see him do it, though, in this system, in Kubiak, because it's not the same as Kevin O'Connell. Kevin O'Connell and Kubiak call games very differently in a lot of ways, but I need to see him be able to execute. And that first week is going to be a big test. Those first, I'd say, up until that bye, that first 7-week stretch will really tell us, I think, kind of who Sam Darnold will be for us in a lot of ways. You've got the Buccaneers in that stretch, the Texans, Mike Tomlin defense in week 2 in Pittsburgh, which isn't going to be any easy feat because we know that Mike Tomlin's defenses are generally quite good. If Sam Darnold can prove he can be what he was last year at, or just a little below, I agree with you completely. The rest of Seattle's roster, Bill, definitely, I think, has now gotten on par with the Rams, or if not surpassed it, because of some of the young talent we've been able to bring in and the chess pieces for Mike McDonald in that way, like a Nick Emenwari, and even Elijah Arroyo for Clint Kubiak. It's just that quarterback position, as we all know, that kind of drives, and like we've talked about, Kyler Murray being kind of the thing that holds back the Cardinals to an extent. We're going to have to see what Brock Purdy does now with San Francisco and all this money and not necessarily having all the weapons down there that he did before. I think Stafford still is the top dog at the quarterback position, whether that's just for going into the season and during the season, he could completely have his decline. And we could all be sitting here going, well, there you go. See, the Rams without a quarterback now, the whole system kind of falls apart. So I do agree to an extent, Bill, that they've closed that gap significantly and they're on par everywhere else. It's just that quarterback situation that I think right now Stafford still gives the Rams a little bit of an edge going into the season as the favorite for this division. But again, that could change very quickly in those first half of the season. And we could be looking at, Sam Darnold playing at the same level, if not even a higher level, and surprise all of us.
I agree with everything you just said. I would say this, though. Sam Darnold's been in the league for 5-6 years now. He's been around. He's had some failures, ups and downs. I think he that time that he spent in San Francisco under Kyle Shanahan and Clint Kubiak as a quarterback coach was a good year for him. Went to Minnesota after that, had a really excellent year, 82.7 overall grade on Pro Football Focus in 2024. 5th in the league in passing, 5th in the league in touchdowns, had the 12 interceptions, but the touchdown to interception ratio was acceptable. His under pressure quarterback rating was 121.8, which was excellent. He's got kind of a bad reputation as folding under pressure or not doing as well. Let's just compare him to Geno Smith. Geno Smith under pressure was had a worse rating. Under a clean pocket, his quarterback rating was 108.6, so a little better under pressure. In fact, under the blitz, he performed really well. Had over 1,000 yards passing on 20 passes over 20 yards, by far the most in the league. Second place was Jordan Love with like 850 or something like that. Darnold also led the league in completions over 20 yards with 28, and touchdown passes with 9 overall. So, as far as stretching the defense, I think Sam Darnold's on par with Geno Smith and being able to do that at a high level. So I'm not worried about that. Can he operate within the system that Clint Kubiak is bringing in? I would argue that it's a better system for him overall because he's not going to be asked to do as much. He's going to be under center. He's going to have a lot of play action, which we didn't have last year to help. The run game is going to be a focal point, and that's going to really take some pressure off him. So I see him being able to perform at a similar level. I don't know that he's going to have this big regression in this offense because I think the offense is well suited for him. So I'm counting on him performing at a similar level. Now, maybe that's naive. I've been around the block though. I mean, you know what I mean? It's not like it's unrealistic to expect him to be in that range. And I think if he is, Seahawks take this division. I mean, it's, and you combine it with a number, you know, let's just say 3 to 5 defense. And you increase the efficiency on the run game. And we can talk about that. I think you give him the weapons. He's got that. The only question mark I have really is not Sam Darnold. It is still the offensive line. Can the offensive line perform? And you take a look at the coaching additions and the scheme and the players. I feel a lot better about it right now than I did in February, but I think we're going to be okay.
Yeah, I think just touch on your offensive line. I agree that's a big one for me, but I think the whole narrative before, it's like, because we've heard we got new coaching. We even heard it last year, right? With when Grubb came in with Huff, and but again, you still have to have the talent to go along with that. And I think the nice thing we talked off season with Schneider is that first round he was like, here you go. I'm finally doing it. I'm drafting a first round talent at guard. So now I gave you the talent. Here's the coaching. Now you guys can make it work. Now, are there still question marks at center and the other guard spot? And Abe Lucas seems to be healthy. So hopefully, fingers crossed that remains throughout the season, that you got your bookends there. So hopefully things can shape up there. But let's kind of dive in. We're going to touch on the running game, but I want to dive into the schedule a little bit with you. Because we threw up predictions actually when the schedule was released, just for some fun, because you like to have that early on. Hey, schedule's released. Let's have a quick prediction thing. So you go down, and I'm sure you've seen the schedule a few times, Bill, but here it is up on the board, and you kind of look at it. Our first impression when we first looked at it was, hey, there's no real quote unquote, gauntlet that we've kind of seen the last couple of seasons. And I like where the bye week lines up. And, the first few games at home there, or that stretch before the bye, to me, it's a favorable schedule. Obviously, the division games, they're always going to be there. They're always tough games. But, you look at it, the second game, you go into Pittsburgh, that's a toss up. Bucks coming into our house. That's going to be a shootout game for me. And then, you look at, I like this schedule. I really do. And I know things change throughout the year, and a team that you thought might be an easy one all of a sudden comes on. But what are your overall impressions of the schedule, and how this can, again, favor them to take this division?
Yeah. Well, if you listen to Vegas, we're favored in 7 games. Do you realize that the 49ers are favored in 15 games? Isn't that crazy? That's crazy to me.
It's insane.
It's insane. So the Seahawks have 7 games against teams that last year had winning records. They only faced 2 games with teams that won over 11 games. So Seattle wins 10. Teams that won more games than them last year, we only have 2 of those, and they're spread out and favorable. One comes after a bye. I think that it's real easy, not real easy. I would say that, you could say the floor is, if no improvements happen at all, Sam Darnold is a neutral improvement over Gino, and everything's kind of the same, the floor is still going to be around 10 wins. You've got Mike McDonald coach defense. That's going to put you in every game. So, and a team, I'll say this, a team that averages a top 10 defense averages 10.5 wins in the NFL. A team that averages a top 5 defense averages 11.5 wins per season, not accounting for any offensive output. That's just, historically going back to 2020. I didn't go back that far, but that's kind of where we're at. So we can kind of expect that from our defense, is like, they're going to keep us in games. Okay. In addition, last year we won 10 games and improved on defense. Got to be a top 10-ish defense, a top 5 defense if you factor in the last 9 games, how we performed. We did that against the aggregate number 1 offenses in the NFL last year. We're not going to face that this year. This schedule is, I think, a 12-win type schedule for Seattle. You could, depending on the way the ball bounces, injuries, etc., you could see 10 or 11 wins. On the plus side, you could see as many as 13, I think, from this team, depending on how Sam Darnold does and the offense does with the running game. Last year we had 1,600 yards rushing overall in the entire season, average 4.4 yards per carry, or 4.2, excuse me, on like 385 attempts. If we can get that up to 500 attempts, which is top 12, it's not outrageous. 12 teams last year rushed for over 500 attempts. 5 teams last year rushed for over 2,000 combined yards. So this is possible. And if we can average 4.4 yards per carry instead of 4.2 times 500 carries, that's 2,200 yards. That would, and you combine that with the top 3 or 4 or 5 defense, those types of teams go deep into the playoffs historically. And I don't think we're that far away.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of interesting. When I look at that first chunk of that schedule, the first thing is getting that crucial first home win. And that's the one thing for me with Seattle when I look at this year is we talk about, and I agree with you, Bill, is that I think Vegas has them drastically undervalued at 7.5 wins. It's what they've kind of given them the last 3 years since Russ left. And we've exceeded every year, whether it be 9 or 10 wins. I look at this and go, the biggest thing for me is how does Seattle play at home this year? And can they capitalize on some of those games at home? On the road, we've been fine the last few years. We've been one of the better road teams in the NFL in traveling. But at home, we've been horrible. And when I look at, that first game against San Francisco, that's going to be a big game. I think more than people may realize later on, it's going to have an effect because we don't play them again until the end of the year. So if San Francisco somehow has an ability to stay and be one of the more relevant teams in the division, that first game is going to be crucial. And yeah, I think I agree Sam Darnold's play is going to have a factor in how this season turns out 100%. But I think it goes more to the run game on offense. And they have to, and I agree with you, they have to have a run game that can establish itself throughout a game and not have spurts and not disappear for like 3 or 4 games like it did last year. Like you look at the Arizona game that everyone wants to talk about where Charbonnet had that big, huge outburst and showing, and then the run game again just disappeared down the stretch. It wasn't really something that was, you could, put your hat on and go, hey, we're in the 4-minute situation. We need to grind this game out. Like you look at the Minnesota game, we lost the Minnesota game in part, in my opinion, due to Ryan Grubb's inability to trust a run game to move the ball down the field when they were in field goal range, got into a pass-happy situation. Geno takes a sack, we give the ball back, and we lose the game. Those are the things that I think are going to be different this year is you have a more experienced play caller. But with that schedule and that first, up to the bye week, I think Seattle, they can come out of that 5-2, and they have 2 losses. Say one of them is to like the Buccaneers. And for me, that Pittsburgh game, I know it's week 2 and people go, well, Pittsburgh doesn't really have a quarterback. Pittsburgh at home is always a different beast, and Pittsburgh at home with Mike Tomlin calling the defense is always going to be challenging. Those are where I could see 2 losses being for Seattle. The rest of that first stretch, I don't see them not coming out with 5 wins.
Right. I agree.
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right with the prediction there. They could even eke out 6 if they can get that Pittsburgh game.
Yeah, I got him. I got him running 6-1. And I agree, Bill. I actually said 12 wins. And your floor, I've heard lower floors, but I agree completely because I really feel like, and Bryce and I have talked about the quarterback room where, you got 7 years younger. You're not taking a step down, in my opinion, with the starting quarterbacks from Geno to Sam. And I think everybody's holding their breath thinking, this guy potentially could fall flat on his face. And I also, don't really see that happening. I think if it comes down, if this run game gets established. But the nice thing is Ryan Grubb isn't here anymore, so we don't have to worry about that as much as far as as far as, hey, look what happened, and then it disappeared. And Mike's in the room after the game with Grubb saying, hey, listen, you need to do this. And I think it was that Niners game earlier on the year where he couldn't have been more obvious that conversation happened, because it went the other direction. It was like run, like it was so predictable. And so now you have this guy that we all
What the
agree,
crazy thing is, Ryan?
yeah,
The crazy thing is we had the 7th best rushing offense success rate in the league. Believe it or
Right.
not.
right.
We just didn't run the ball. We were 29th in rushing attempts. So it's like it does take the commitment. Now, Mike McDonald emphatically states, okay, most importantly, the stated identity of the offense is first and foremost, and he wants to be a physical downhill offense that stresses the defense in multiple ways, particularly running the football. But what has Schneider and McDonald done to make sure that happens? Well, they did a lot. I mean, they emphatically fired their offensive coordinator that utterly failed at the job, and they spent the time to methodically go through all of the coaches. I think Keith and I, kind of predicted that they would do Clint Kubiak early on in the process because he was such a good fit for what Mike McDonald stated that he wanted to be able to do. And then you add the assistant coaches, John Benton, 33 years as an offensive line coach, run game coordinator, Rick Dennison with 28 years, Andrew Janoko, 13 years of experience as a quarterback coach. And I think this offense is in really good hands, and it plays into the strengths of our offensive line much better, and our running back room. When you take a look at, the top of the room all the way through to our new draft pick, Martinez, this is a great offense and a great scheme for those players. And so I just think that the only correlation between last year and this year is a lot of the players are the same. But you add in Gray Zabel, you add in some second year improvement on a lot of guys, but really the scheme and the coaching staff is the biggest factor in success. And I can't see this offense being less than like 15th in the league in running. It just isn't going to happen. I think the commitment is so strong to making it successful that if there's a will, there's a way. It's going to get done.
It's really funny you talked about the offense in that regard, Bill, because for me, I love this offense. I've loved it since Mike Shanahan ran it in Denver with Gary Kubiak and Terrell Davis and John Elway and all that. Like, that's the heart of that,
right.
that
Yeah.
offense. And the thing for me that's really interesting about it, when I went back and started looking at just the pieces of those offenses that they had in the 90s and then how it carried through to even when he was at Washington. And the one thing I look back at to the Seattle offense last year, Seattle was very, very last year, in my opinion, especially in the receiving core. You had certain guys that only did certain things. Like JSN was a very certain slot could do a little bit of this outside. DK was very much, this is DK's role, and this was Tyler's role. And it was very regimented into these are what these guys do. And they didn't really interchange anybody. When you look at this receiver room, for example, which has had a lot of turnover, you now see guys that complement each other and can move in and out of different spots. Like Cooper Kupp can play the same role JSN plays, and JSN can bump over and do what Cooper does. And same with the 2 draft picks we brought in, and Torrey Horton and Ricky White are great route runners. That's the one thing I look at this receiving core. And some people may think I'm crazy, and that's fine. But yes, DK was a physical freak, and he gave you some unique abilities with his ability to take the top off of defense. He wasn't great winning contested catches, and he was not a great route runner. Those are 2 things for sure we can say about DK Metcalf. When I look now at this receiving core, for sure, I see better route running out of everybody, top to bottom, are better route runners. The ability to separate is going to be better for this offense, and I think these guys are going to be better at sitting in zones and doing those type of things in this offense for Clint Kubiak. And then you go and get a weapon like an Elijah Arroyo, who, I don't know if you read Brady Henderson's recent piece, but it talks about how Clint Kubiak views Arroyo as a potential X in the offense too, and using him outside to take some of those big target opportunities, which I think you'll see in the red zone, is they'll split him out wide and create mismatches that way. And so for me, when I look at this offense, yes, there's been a lot of change, but like you said, it's been more on a coaching staff, but you haven't changed a coaching staff on that side of the ball for, unknown commodities. You've gone and got very, very well-known commodities that all know a system. So no one is learning this system as they go, where you look at a lot of the coaches that they had in place last year, we're all kind of learning the system as they went. And even for a guy like Jake Peets, who stayed, he knows this system because of his time with McVay and understands it. So he's not even really playing catch up and trying to learn Kubiak's system. Throughout this entire room now in this organization, everyone knows what each side of the ball is doing and knows it well, to the defensive side now being with Mike McDonald for year 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
I think
sure.
overall too, you've got better blockers on the outside. You mentioned Arroyo out there. That's going to be a positive. You talk about lining him up at an X. I would cautionary tale there. While he is a physical guy, he's not going to beat probably zone coverage out there. Now, if they press him, if he can beat the press, then yes, you can use him a lot out there to win matchups and high point balls, especially in the red zone. I think that could be an effective weapon in the red zone. But you're right. I think the efficiency, let's talk about the efficiency of the offense. If you can get that run game going, and if you can run 4.4, 4.6 yards per carry, and you're committed to it, and you look at the weapons we've got in the backfield, receiving the ball out of the backfield, and Sam Darnold's efficiency with the type of players that we now have. You take DK Metcalf out of the equation. Tyler Lockett was diminishing as well. I think you can replace that even with Scatling type numbers. And then you add Torrey Horton into that equation as well. And you bring him along as long as Cooper Kupp's staying healthy, I hope. The offense can be super efficient. Like we'll see a drastic improvement on third down conversions and red zone opportunities, I think, with this team as it is constructed and meant to operate. So I'm really excited about it because it complements the defense so much. I think if you can do a better job on defense, one of the things I would like to see them do better at is generating turnovers. If this team can, be a top 10 defense, but also top 10 in generating turnovers to give the offense opportunities, short fields, and just more opportunities to move the ball, this team's going to be difficult to defend and to operate against.
Yeah. So talking about the offense, staying on the offense, let's touch on the quarterback room, Bill. I know you and I sort of before we came on talked about from right now to a few months ago and sort of what my outlook was. And for me, I had I like Geno Smith here. I think 3 years he did a good job. But we always talked about the future and how long is this bridge? And you also have a guy that's aging. He's moving on. He's 35, 36 years old. That's up there for any quarterback. So, obviously we make the move and we bring in a guy 7 years younger than Sam Darnold. We go out and all get excited about the 3rd round pick in Jalen Milroe. And then you bring back a familiar face in that backup role in Drew Lock as well. So what are your thoughts in the evolution of this QB room, where it stands right now? Obviously, we've been sitting here saying, hey, we all think this team can compete for a division with Sam Darnold. What's your overall outlook with this quarterback room in 25 and beyond?
Well, in 2025, this is Sam Darnold's team. So there's not going to be a competition per se. It would be, the wheels would come off if Sam Darnold were to go down in training camp or early in the season to some extent. I think the team would be actively searching for another quarterback to come in. Now you can say you can hand the keys to Drew Lock. That's fine. I think Drew Lock's a 50-50 quarterback for you. And that's kind of what you want out of a backup, guy that can win 50% of the games. And I think that's what you would expect out of him and his level of play. Now, you surround him with the best possible team in a and roster in a efficient offense where it's timing based and he needs to get the ball out and he's got 2 or 3 reads he needs to be responsible for. Drew Lock I think can be successful. And so I'm more comfortable with Drew Lock at the backup spot than Sam Howell. Sam Howell was not that type of quarterback. And I think that's exactly why they made that move. And Drew Lock is back. Now, let's talk about the player everyone wants to talk about, Jalen Milroe. I like Jalen Milroe. I like Jalen Milroe in the second round. Like Keith and I had a show about quarterbacks, and early on, right after the Senior Bowl, we moved off of Jalen Milroe. Like we got on some other quarterbacks. We talked about a lot of different prospects, way more than Milroe. He wasn't even going to be an option for us. But as time went on and we had more time to actually watch film of the season and so forth and past seasons, there's a lot to work with Jalen Milroe, right? Physical upside, obviously the speed, the legs are amazing. Like his ability to get out to the edge and cut up field is second to none in the NFL, even better than Lamar at this point in his career. It's an exciting football player that can really stress the defense in certain situations. And I think they will take advantage of that. Now, and what I mean by that is he'll be in 1 or 2 series a game. He could see some red zone snaps, I think, because he creates some mismatches down there. Especially, like I said, on backside stuff where offensive flows in one direction and he counters and goes backside, especially if they leave a defensive end on him, he's toast. So they're going to have to probably put a spy on him, which allows better efficiency with the rest of the normal offense. So Jalen Milroe is an interesting guy, and into 2026, 27, it gets really interesting because you can move off Sam Darnold if you want. So if they look at him as a quarterback that is really taken to the system, shown tremendous growth, and has earned an opportunity to compete in the 2026 training camp for a starting role, things could get really interesting.
Yeah, for me, it was interesting, Bill, because when I was going through the process, Jalen Milroe to me always was developmental. Like he has all these physical abilities where you just go like, if he hits and you are able to develop some of the issues that he does have, you are going to end up with a quarterback that, if he had those, would have been the number 1 pick in this draft class, or at least number 2. It would have been him and Cam Ward. You're discussing for who do we take, because one, you get all this physical upside and he can do this, this, and this. The other guy, again, is a very accomplished passer and gives you some physical upside as well. Now, Milroe didn't have those, so he fell. And so when we were doing our draft show, I was sitting there, and about the week before, I had heard rumblings that after his visit, Seattle was very high on him. And so I went back and did a deep dive on Jalen Milroe. And I came out of there going, if you're looking at a quarterback that's realistically going to be in Seattle's range where they want to take, he checks off a lot of John Schneider's boxes that John Schneider has loved. He's physically explosive. He's big. He's got a cannon for an arm. And those are all the things we've heard John say all the time about the quarterbacks. Russell Wilson was a bit of an anomaly because he didn't have the size, but he had the big arm, the athleticism, and all those things that John looks for. And when I saw that pick 92, I even said on our show, I said, I think they're going to take Milroe here. He's sitting here. This is a lottery pick. Take the swing and see what you get. And again, I think he's going to be, implemented in some run packages this year. I think you're going to see him be your, the fact that Seattle actually voted to keep the tush push in the NFL at these, or I think they did or they didn't. I can't remember what they did at the tush push thing. I think Seattle may use the tush push this year with Jalen Milroe because of his size and his ability. But he now makes it much harder to defend your team in under 5 yards and, 3rd and 5 minus, inside the 10-yard line on the goal line, those type of things. He makes it much more challenging. I agree. This is Sam Darnold's team. They're not going to – Milroe would have to all of a sudden surpass Darnold in so many areas that it would be astounding that he would be able to do it. And, you know, some people are saying, oh, this is very reminiscent of Flynn and Russell. No, Russell was a much more accomplished passer coming out of college. Milrow's best thing is that he doesn't even have to worry about, hey, if Sam gets hurt, I'm next in line. I think that's Drew Lock. That's why you brought in Drew Lock. Jalen Milrow just gets to develop. And I think in the long run, Seattle may have got a diamond in the rough with Milrow if they can develop him. And like you said, Andrew Jericho there, the QB coach, 13 years of experience. And he also was the quarterback coach at the Senior Bowl where Jalen Milrow was this year, which I think gave them some extra insight into that player. Overall, when I look at this QB room, I think as a whole, it's better than it's probably been since Russ and Tavares Jackson were in that QB room together. And we're talking like back in the early LOB days, like through and through, you know, Sam Darnold's going to be the starter. He can give you what he gave you last year. Drew Lock gives you the ability, if Sam were to go down, we know Drew Lock can win a game or maybe keep you in 2 and you can go, you know, 500 over a 2-game stretch if Sam was out. I never felt with Sam Howell that was going to be the case after what I saw with the Green Bay game last year. And I went, they need to upgrade the backup quarterback position drastically because you cannot rely on Sam Howell to come in and keep your team afloat for a week or 2.
Yeah, and I think Drew Lock. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Bill.
Go ahead, and I'll follow up.
Oh no, real quick. I was just gonna say that the Flynn comparison too. I've heard that too, but I just think, you know, you look at Darnold. I think Darnold's more established. He had a full season of great football, and he's been in this league 6 years now. Where Flynn was sort of like a flyer. Like we're coming off that transition. He had this great meaningless game, and then they give him the money, and then here's Russ. It was way more of a competition. This is more dead set. Like Darnold's the guy. Here's the perfect situation, and that's what we said. And we talked about this, Bill, like into the draft when we drafted Witherspoon, when there was talks that we might take Anthony Richardson. It was like, well, here's a great spot for this kid, because again, it would have been like you sit behind Geno for 2 seasons. He's a development project. Now, fast forward, they get to do that again. They have a guy that's not obviously didn't go 4th overall, but you got him perfectly where you want him, right? You pick him in the 3rd round. There's no pressure. That's the thing. When you take a guy the 4th overall pick, there's way more pressure that this guy's got to start in today's NFL. Where a guy in the 3rd round, it's almost like, I wouldn't say an afterthought, but it's like, yeah, this is kind of where he's supposed to be. He's a development guy, and hopefully he can sit, develop, learn, and then transition to the next guy. So for me, it's such an awesome situation to be in, because we compete now. We got a great chance to win the division, and your future is potentially sitting there. So for me, I'm super, super pumped with this room right now.
So I had a couple things, and I have a question for Bryce. When you take a look at the way that New Orleans set up their offense, and especially like the first 10 plays, they were scripted and they were purposeful. Like Clint Kubiak is a kind of a throwback offensive coordinator, if you will, where he sets up a defense purposefully to find out exactly how they're going to defend in certain formations. And he will run 5 different looks out of the same formation to find out exactly where the defense is going to be, strong side, stack, drop back into what coverage, etc. And then he will attack that later in the game. The other thing he will do is he will attack. You'd mentioned the idea that Grubb moved off, success in a game and never came back to it. Kubiak is the opposite. Kubiak is a guy that will run a play until the defense can stop it, which also plays into the strength of the offense, where once the defense stops it and you run a similar formation, the defense thinks you're running that again, and you run something completely different. And that's where Milrow comes in. You take a look at the way that the offense likes to stretch a defense horizontally, and they do that with some jet sweep stuff. Or just looking like they're going to run a jet sweep. They do that with the play action, and they do that with the wide zone blocking scheme, right? And my question for you, Brett, well, I have 2 questions. One is, can you imagine Jalen Milrow running that scheme and then adding a run pass option to it? like I was looking at the success rate that New Orleans had with the quarterback that they had, Carr, and didn't have the option to run the ball really. And I was trying to envision how Jalen Milroe would look in that offense in those sets where a backside defender would have to account for him. You know, in the way that they were running the ball prior, that backside defender, that defensive end, even the outside linebacker would crash down, and they didn't have to worry about somebody peeling back. With Jalen Milroe, that would be a nightmare to defend, I think. Second question is, talk to me about the development of Milroe this year and into 26. Now, he did have a completion percentage in college of like 65%, right? It's not like there's a myth out there that he couldn't throw the ball. He can throw the ball. He just was very inconsistent. And talk to me about how that improves. I know that once you're a quarterback and you're a quarterback guy, once you get those kind of things and muscle memory and stuff, they're very difficult to kind of get out of. Talk to me about that.
So for the first part of your question, Bill, with the offense and just the structure that would happen once you included Jalen Milroe into that horizontal attack, especially with the scheme that Kubiak likes, this wide zone and the boot action that comes off of it, you really make the O-line's blocking a lot easier because of, like you said, that backside player cannot fully come down and crash because, as we've seen with, McVay doing it to us, O'Connell did it. They always run a guy back across the formation into the flat, and now it's a two-way go. And when you now are having that two-way go, not with a Sam Darnold, and say we're talking about this 2 years from now, and Jalen Milroe is the guy, you've really put a defender in a lose-lose because he either dumps that ball and the tight end takes it or the slot takes it and runs, or you leave him and you say, okay, you know what? I hope my safety's going to flow back over this way and he's going to be athletically inclined to pick up a guy that's 220 pounds and runs a 4.38.
4.3.
Yeah. And when he moves in the open field, does not move like a guy that's 220, moves like a guy that's 180 pounds and is so smooth in the way he runs. And that's the thing for me when you have that, it's very much when Darrell Bevel came to Seattle. And you remember he was in Minnesota with Brett Favre and Tavares Jackson. He had a great play action game and they could run the ball really well. And then in that 2012, when they drafted Russ, halfway through that season, they started implementing the RPO stuff into it where they'd either give it to Marshawn or Russ would keep it. And you could see the structure change on how teams had to play. You can't commit everything to the initial run in the box. And that's where for Clint Kubiak, I think he looks at it and goes, if we can develop the passing set, we could have a situation where we have a guy that can hurt you in two ways because you cannot commit to the run. You can, but then you're asking us to beat you another way, which you give us an easy out. And it really puts a defense in a bind. So that'll be an interesting thing to see how it develops. And it really stresses out, apex defenders in the defense on the outside because they're wrong either way. They're not right. Like their best hope is that the quarterback falls over his own feet and it ends up being a sack that way. That's their hope. To his development point, so for me with quarterbacks, the one thing watching Jalen Milroe, if you watch his Nick Saban year that he was with Nick Saban, the 2023 season, his passing was much better than it was when he came to Kalen DeBoer's system last year. And the reason for that is Nick Saban ran and he had a staff run more of an NFL-based type of system and concepts and things that they did. So footwork matched up to routes for Jalen Milroe. And then they let him be athletic. Kalen DeBoer's system is very shotgun heavy. It's very much deep shots as we've seen. And so it played to that strength, but it doesn't develop a lot underneath. Even when you look at Michael Penix and when he was in Washington with Ryan Grubb and Kalen DeBoer, a lot of Michael Penix's big plays were shot plays. And they were pushing the ball down the field to Rome Odunze or Jalen McMillan or a bunch of these guys. And, their short game was really screens and it was really throwing the ball underneath and stuff like that. There wasn't a lot of a intermediate passing game. And so when I look at the development of Milroe, and you were talking about muscle memory, his actual arm path and the way he throws a ball in his upper body is awesome. It doesn't have a hitch. It doesn't have bad structure to it. That's where you get worried with a quarterback at the NFL level. Like you think of Tim Tebow and his unorthodox throwing motion and some of the guys that have come before, even like somehow Phillip Rivers made it work, but Phillip Rivers had a very unorthodox delivery. Those are where you get worried at the professional level trying to break those habits. The biggest thing for Jalen Milroe, and I think what happened with him going through 4 offensive coordinators in 4 years of college, especially with Kalen DeBoer, is his eyes and feet don't match a lot of the time. So he'll be looking, he'll see something, and then he'll try and deliver the ball, but his feet won't be set properly in his base, and he can't actually have the accuracy he needs. And the thing with accuracy is it's more has to do with how your feet and hips are aligned to your target than it does with how your arm releases the football to the accuracy point. And so I think for him, it's going to be something that he can actually develop. He can actually work on, because it was the same issue Josh Allen had coming out. And Josh Allen's feet and eyes were horrible those first couple of years in Buffalo. And if you look at him now, that's the biggest area he's made an improvement, is getting his feet set where his target is with his eyes and delivering the ball, because his accuracy numbers at the NFL level have jumped up since his first 3 years. His first 3 years, hey, he's a runner. He can throw the ball long. He's got a hose for an arm. And then all of a sudden, Josh Allen started becoming this, hey, he can complete 68% of his passes. He's almost up at 70%. Like, this guy that was like the big knock on him coming out of the draft. Well, if you understand where the issue is and you actually address it in the lower half of the body, if that's the issue point, it's a lot easier to correct than it is, hey, we got to change how you deliver a football with your upper body. That can be more of a challenge.
Yeah.
Nice.
Good stuff. Hey, let's keep it going. I want to talk about this running back room. We talk about how this is going to be a focal point of this offense, staying with the quarterback, tying that in with this offense, and how is this going to help Sam? And, hopefully he stays healthy the year. But you look at this room now, and it's stacking up. And you talked about how they went out and got a guy that might fit, fits their downhill running style, and Damian Martinez. Then you talk about, you still have Canine there. You still have Sharps. Kenny McIntosh, when he got in games, looked good. And then you still have Halani. You have 5 backs. How is your overall feeling with this running back room, Bill? You excited about it? And also, I want to get your thoughts on how many backs do you think they're going to carry going into the season, and who might be left out in this room?
Yeah, no, I'm excited about it. I feel really good about at the top, Walker and Charbonnet. Let's be honest, that's where the bulk of this workload is going to be during the season. I think they fit the scheme well. That's the important part. I think they drafted, Gray Zabel and to help with that. Very athletic guy that can get out into the second level and out into the wide zone. So he's going to be Kenneth Walker's best friend on the left side there. As far as Damian Martinez, McIntosh, I think Martinez in 2025 will be a guy that you can say he's insurance. If something happens to Charbonnet, or at the top, you've got to split carries between Charbonnet and another player. I think I give him a slight edge over McIntosh as the season progresses. But right now, I would say McIntosh still is your number 3. I think he showed last year some grit and some determination on his runs that I didn't know that he really had. And then he's a guy also that can catch the ball out of the backfield for you too. So I would imagine that's going to be a factor that nobody's really talking about yet, is actually receiving the ball out of the backfield. I think Ken Walker could have an opportunity to have 75 receptions, and I'm not exaggerating. If you take a look at the way they used Kamara last year in New Orleans and the history of the Kubiak kind of scheme and system, they really want to utilize that position group. And in addition to using the tight ends more like a normal tight end room, Seattle has not done that for years. So that'll be an interesting thing. But getting back to the running back thing, I'd mentioned, some criteria for the if it's going to be successful running the ball here in Seattle. And I'm kind of unequivocally, yes, absolutely. Last year we ran again for 1,647 yards on 383 attempts, 4.2 yards per carry. If we can get that up over 2,000, that's going to give you a top 15 rushing attack. If you can get it up to 4.4 even yards per attempt, you're going to be looking good. 4.6 is not out of the question in this scheme with this running back room. Last year, Philadelphia, just an example, because they won the Super Bowl, they rushed for 3,000 yards. We had 1,627. They rushed for 3,048 yards on 621 attempts. almost double our attempts, 4.9 yards per carry, and they were a Super Bowl team. So, and the reason I said that is that, that's kind of what we're shooting for. That's what Mike McDonald wants to do. He wants to be the best rushing team in the NFL. There were 12 teams that finished over 2,150 yards rushing, and over at least 463 attempts. 8 of those teams made the playoffs. So I think, the importance of being able to run the ball is really important. And I think that there's no correlation for me between what we did last year or what we did the year before and what we're going to do this year, because it's going to be completely different. Like, it's not even going to look the same.
Yeah, when I look at this running back room, the other thing I think that we got to count into this running game, is going to be a fullback. And I think Robbie Oots is going to be, someone that's really, really interesting and integral to this team. I think there's a shot that if you, and I may sound crazy with this, and Bill, you may completely disagree with me. I think Charbonnet actually has the potential to be a trade chip for Seattle in the preseason if a team loses somebody, because I think this system fits Kenneth Walker a lot better. I think you look at Martinez, and the one thing I would say with Martinez where he might have a slight edge to Charbonnet, and that's nothing to say Charbonnet is not a good running back. I think Charbonnet has, the ability to be a starting running back. We saw that last year. I think Martinez brings more of an attitude to his running style that I think will fit with what Mike McDonald wants, with what Clint Kubiak wants to complement Kenneth Walker, because this outside zone scheme works to a back that can get up to speed quickly. And even Martinez, I think, gets up to speed a lot faster if you watched his Miami film than Charbonnet does. Charbonnet struggled, like if you look at that New England game, and they were still trying to run a lot of the stuff that K9 was effective running, and he struggled with it. It wasn't until the Arizona game where they went gap power and it was all downhill that Charbonnet really, we got to see what he's capable of. Kenny McIntosh, to me, is kind of the interesting one because he's a bit of both. He can run your gap power if you need to, but he can also get up to speed quick enough to run some of this outside zone that Seattle's going to want to run. I think Kalani's probably going to be a practice squad guy again if he makes it through there. But I think there's a good chance they could keep those 4 running backs plus Robbie Oots. And maybe that's where the tight end position in this all gets really interesting, because I think Robbie Oots is another guy that'll be maybe the 3rd tight end, because I think Barner and Arroyo are for sure on this roster. I think the jury's still out on if Noah Fant is at his cap hit if they keep him. They brought in Saubert, who knows the system well and is a good blocking tight end, and Brady Russell. We've seen what he can do. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that particular group, because those positions are so crucial, obviously, to the run game. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how it shapes up, but I definitely agree. This running game will be better in 2025. And I think it's something that we're going to see throughout the season get even better and better. I think it'll start fast in that first couple of weeks, and we'll be like, wow, look at this running game. And it won't even be as how good it will be once everything lines up properly.
The only thing I'm worried. Oh, sorry, Bill.
Well, I mean, I'll say it really quick. The roster prediction stuff is going to be fascinating because you're going to carry 3 quarterbacks. You're going to carry a fullback. You want to carry 4 running backs. And you mentioned the tight end room. Like, you're probably going to then go from 6 or 7 wide receivers to 5, and you might carry 1 less offensive lineman and try to get them onto the practice squad. So it's going to be a fascinating, puzzle to put together. Okay, that's it.
I was just going to say real quick that the Charbonnet thing's interesting though too, because Ken's on his last year of his deal. So what are their long-term plans with Ken Walker? Obviously bit of an injury history, and I don't know. They might say, look, we got this young room with Damian Martinez. Sharp's got another year. That's going to be kind of interesting to keep your eye on too. What happens with that contract, because they might think, look, this we're not going to pay this guy. We got enough young guys in this room, and maybe Sharps is the next guy up too. I don't know. Because I do like his style. I mean, he runs hard too. He puts his head down too. So, and we saw glimpses when he got a start. I think they like what they see. Now, does he fit as well as K9? Probably not. But again, do they extend Ken? That's another conversation. But real quick, kind of last thing, then we'll get into a few quick Q&As. just talking about this defense, Bill. We touched on how they've come on at the end of the season or the latter second half of the year, and Mike opened up the playbook, and this, you could kind of see where why they brought in Mike, and kind of the same things he was doing in Baltimore. Wow, you know what, this could be the same thing here for us in Seattle. How does this defense we talk about hovering around 10 to really become the elite defense here in Seattle?
I mean, that's a great question. You could almost argue they're already elite. Now, in 2024, they allowed 21.6 points per game, 333 yards per game over all 17 games. But that included that really crappy front 8 games where they were a sieve, historically bad, defending the run. They still finished the season 11th in points allowed per game and 12th in yards allowed per game, all while facing number 1 combined offenses in the NFL. Just to give you an example, though, of what elite is, the Eagles allowed 17.6 points per game and allowed 278 yards per game. They were second in points, number 1 in yards allowed. But since week 9, and you guys may have seen this little chart that's kind of been floating around, the EPA, defensive EPA per play since week 9, Seattle's ranked 3rd behind the Eagles and the Ravens. In the final 9 games of the season, Seattle didn't allow more than 140 yards rushing to any team. They allowed that 5 times in the first 8 games. And they held their final 9 opponents below 100 yards rushing. And then you're going to run the starters back for the second season under Mike McDonald. Last season I mentioned we faced all the number 1 offenses. You're going to see a second year jump, hopefully, from Byron Murphy and Tyrese Knight. You've got a full season of Ernest Jones. You've got a full season of Nuasu. You got DeMarcus Lawrence added to the roster. You've added Emanwari in the draft. We haven't even really talked about that. You could see another additional year of development under Rick Woolen in this scheme. And then, you factor in the offense into this too, for me, because I think the offense is going to be more efficient. You're going to take the time of possession is going to go up. Your improvement on third down conversions and red zone efficiency is going to go up. You're going to punt more or punt less. And the defense is going to be off the field a little bit more. And I just think that you add the idea of maybe generating a few more turnovers during the season. That's how this defense takes that jump, because you're not doing it with a bunch of new players. You're going to run back the same defense. You're going to do it with creating more efficiencies in what you do. And certain players are going to come back and be available for the duration. So I'd already argue that they're elite based on how they finished. All they need to do is just keep doing what they're doing. And even if they didn't improve, like I said, a defense that's top 5 or top 10, it averages about 10.5 wins a season. A top 5 defense, those defenses and those teams average 11.5 wins per season. So I would say that we're on that course. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm really excited to see this defense evolve into whatever it's going to be this year, because I think it's going to be more aggressive. I think they're going to have more swagger. They're going to be more physical. And I'm here for it, man, because I'm a defense guy. Like I'm all over that.
Yeah, that's the one key thing with this, Bill, is that this whole defense is returning, and you've now added a piece in Emanwari, which I think it'll be interesting to see where Emanwari plays. You've heard that they're probably going to put him in the nickel spot. He'll be that big nickel. And that'll take some of those reps away from Devin Witherspoon and allow him to play more on the outside, which I think is going to be a better thing for the coverage in this defense as well. There's 2 areas on this defense I do have some concerns, and it's nothing to do with the starting group. It's more on the depth side. The cornerback room is nowhere as deep as it used to be, and the linebacker off the ball is nowhere as deep as it used to be. And that's where I look at it and I go, like, maybe this, Jackson, who they did sign after the rookie minicamp, maybe he can be someone that can be a good depth piece in there. You got Drake Thomas, you got Patrick O'Connell, Josh Ross is in there as well. And then, out at corner, you brought back Josh Jobe, who we got to see if he's going to be able to do what he did last year again. Zy Alexander's another interesting guy from LSU that they brought in that had a pretty good minicamp for rookies, it sounded like. So those are my kind of, and does Tyreek Woolen play better in this system in year 2 now that he knows what the expectations are going to be a big thing because he's in a contract year. So it's going to be interesting for me. There's one area that I wish they had addressed or could have addressed, and maybe they still do, and that's getting another edge in here. Someone that can be a little bit more, we don't know what we're going to get with Chenna because he is coming again off another significant injury season. Derek Hall, we saw flashes of. Boy Mafe, we've seen flashes of. You're going to have to pay one of those two guys, maybe both in the next 2 seasons here because Mafe, I believe, is in a contract year himself. Derek Hall would be next year. I would like to see more certainty in that edge room. And, I get they brought in DeMarcus Lawrence, but he's 32, and I think he's going to be more of a run defender than he's yeah. And so the pass rush is where it'll be interesting. How much can Leonard Williams duplicate what he did last year? Does Byron Murphy take a step? Are they able to free him up to take some steps? That's where, for me, I'm kind of concerned. I wouldn't say, or maybe not concerned is the right word, but I have questions. I do think, though, they will be more aggressive. I think you'll see more blitzes out of Mike McDonald than they did last year because this team knows this scheme now and they can do more things. So it'll be an interesting evolution to watch transpire this year. The consistency factor will be, in my opinion, determine whether they can end up being elite and we can say, hey, we have a top 7 NFL defense from start to finish will be the key part in that question will be the consistency level.
Yes. So, hey, Bill, real quick, we'll jump into a few Q&As and, have some fun with this. And we'll start out with one from Corey and something we've been talking about when we, earlier in the show, we touched on the division. To your point, like the Niners are, predicted to have this huge jump, but, Corey's looking at look, Niners have 5 rookies starting on defense and their O-line has been neglected for too long. So what are your thoughts? I mean, you're pretty much in agreement with that where they're predicted by the national guys way too high. What are your thoughts here from Corey?
Yeah, I mean, they've got a nice defense overall, and it keeps them in games, but they don't defend the run as well as they used to when they used to have that defensive line pretty stacked. Nick Bosa's got another year on him. They're going to rely on Mikael Williams, their draft pick, to come in and hold down the right defensive end spot for them opposite of Nick Bosa. Now that could be good, but it also, traditionally, first year guys are going to they're not going to be a plus for you overall, especially defending the run. Fred Warner's older. Their back end is not nearly as strong as it has been before. So for me, it's a step back for those guys. I don't have any idea how the national media is picking these guys to win 11 plus games.
Is the Robert Saleh hype
defensive side for sure?
Is the Robert Saleh hype a little real there? You think his return, all of a sudden they're like, whoa, kind of reminiscent of, when he was there, how dominant this team was. You think some of that plays a factor where this team's like, oh, wow, you know what? He's back. It's the Niners of old. Because that's the only thing I can see where this jumps so big here with predicting this team to all of a sudden be, especially after you pay Brock and lose some players.
Yeah. No, before last year, though, you got to remember they went to the Super Bowl, so they had a roster that went to the Super Bowl, didn't win it. Saleh comes back. I think that's a, definite plus, but they haven't been lacking in defensive coordinators over the last few years, and they've been elevated into starting coaching jobs and whatnot. So it comes down to talent for me, where they're just talent deficient now. Their cap is caught up with them even before the Brock Purdy signing. And now into the future, it's only going to get worse. So it really is a win this year or not for them. I think their roster continues to diminish for a few years while Seattle is ascending. You could say the Rams are kind of neutral. The Cardinals are somewhat ascending. I mean, they won 8 games last year. I think they could win 10 games. Bryce, at the top of the show, you mentioned this division being tough. I agree. I think that there's going to be potentially 3 teams in this division in the playoffs, division winner plus 2 wild cards, and we're kind of beat up on each other a little bit. So we'll see how that goes. I do like the idea of Mike McDonald in this defense in this division, though. Last year, 3 consecutive weeks, Seattle held the Rams to 13 points of regulation, held the 49ers to 17 points, held Kyler Murray down in Arizona and held them to 3 points. I think Mike McDonald's figured out the offenses in this division, which is the first time in a long time. I don't see that going away. Like, it's only going to get, worse for those other teams, I think, in this division, because talent wise, I think Seattle's really caught up, and we'll see.
Yeah, here's another one.
I'll answer this one.
Okay, well, here you
ahead,
go.
Ryan.
Well, you both can answer it, but the possible Zach trade, I know we kind of mentioned it, but nothing we really need for the trade. So, Bryce, go ahead on that.
I disagree. I don't think this team is by far complete yet. And I think what we just talked about with the defense, I think edge is a big area of need for this team, actually, more than some people may want to be aware of. Yes, I get we got Derek Hall and Boy Mafe Chenna, but like me and Bill said, DeMarcus Lawrence wasn't brought here to be a pass rusher. He was brought here to set the edge in the run game and kind of do that sort of role. We are hoping Chenna's healthy, very much like we're hoping Abe Lucas will be healthy. And then you're relying on Boy Mafe and Derek Hall as your main pass rushing source. And we saw what that was like last year. Like it's hit and miss. Some games they're there, some games they're not. And if you're able to trade a player and maybe bring in a guy that gives you a little bit more upside, and yeah, you may have to give up Zach plus something to get someone, that's the area of need. You can't look at this roster and go, yeah, it's completed. It's, through and through, we're great. Like, we're not. Yes, we have good starters, but there's always room to improve. And when you have go ahead, Bill.
Would you do this trade? Would you do Zach Charbonnet and Noah Fant and a first-round draft pick for Hendrickson?
Am I getting Hendrickson on would you get another year or two? Would you be able to restructure it, or would it just be the contract he has?
I mean, you got to get him in the building under the contract, but there'd be some agreement, I would imagine, that he would be.
I would do that. I would do that trade. Yes, I would do that trade because you add Hendrickson.
We only have 5 draft picks next year, though.
Mm-hmm.
I know that side of it, but I look at it and go, when you bring in a guy like that has the level of impact he has had, and I still think there is still that level to be. I don't see Hendrickson's cliff right here in front of him. I see it maybe a year or two down the line where you'll see a more steady decline. You add him to that defensive front with, young Mafe, young Hall, Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy, and he's a bona fide guy. Defenses have to account for him. Like, realistically, when you look at this D-line, the one guy that I would say teams circle and go, yeah, we got to make sure we kind of know where he is Leonard Williams at this point. No one's circling their thing going, hey, we got to have a solid game plan for dealing with Derek Hall or Chenna or Boy Mafe or even Byron Murphy yet. But when you have that and you add that to the defense, it changes the dynamic of how Mike McDonald can even play things. So if it was Zach Charbonnet, Noah Fant, and a first, I would consider doing that. Or even, you might not have to give up a first. Maybe it's a second. I would still do that trade.
I just don't see. I think you could do something else rather than Zach Sharp. I think because you want to get this running game going and be an identity here, that because I don't know where they stand on Ken Walker. I go back to that. So just to think, like Noah Fant, completely expendable. But I don't see it with Sharps, man. I don't think he's. I don't know how much value he's going to bring for you either. So I think he's an important piece for this team going in. I don't think they want to do Ken Walker and all of a sudden McIntosh. I think the NFL is at that 1-2 punch at back, and I think they got it right now with Sharps and Walker. Whatever Walker's future is. Also, whatever Walker's future is as well, but I think that 1-2 punch right here, you have it. Well, I don't know if you want to give that up.
So, if the Seahawks are 6-1 at the break, and they're chasing championships, right? and you've already got a number 1 defense or a number 5 defense, do you go out and make it even better to chase that Super Bowl, or are you happy with where you're at on defense? Do you try to do something on offense? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's tough to say. That's tough to say. I mean, 6-1, you're in a good spot either way. But yeah, I guess depends which one's looking like it needs some help, right? But yeah, I agree. I mean, that edge for me is that kind of missing piece as well. Like just that kind of that next level guy plus the depth, right? I mean, I agree that's kind of that. If we had that, I would be kind of overall. I know Bryce mentioned the depth's a little thin at linebacker and corner, but you get that dominant edge rusher, or at least another guy in that room that can kind of push it. That to me would be that sort of overall kind of finish for this D to really be fired up going into the year here. Go ahead, Bryce.
All right, so this one's from Dean. He goes, Drew Lock is going to surprise people in training camp. I don't know if that's a good surprise or a bad surprise. I'm just going to state that right now. It could be a Sam Howell level of surprise where we're having concerns about where he's throwing the ball, or Drew Lock could come in and definitely show that he's made some improvements for sure and really be a solid number 2, I guess, is the hope there. Let's see here.
I like, yeah. Whoops. Sorry, just real quick. I know we got just because coming in, like obviously we talked about this. Bob Holmes, a lot of people might think this. You talk about Bill. You brought up the national media. You have them at Vegas. What was that, 7 wins? So if you thought this is a 7-win team, you'd say, yeah, this is got people thinking, is this a rebuilding year? But if you've been listening to us, this team has a chance to definitely compete for the division. So yeah, you got to kind of get away from the big name headline guys that left this building, right? DK and Gino, and look at this roster as a whole. And yeah, we're all excited about it. So
here's one from Steph, and he goes, this is what his division prediction is: 49ers 11-6, Rams 11-6, Hawks 9-8, Cards 7-10.
Huh.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I disagree. The Cardinals are not going to fall backwards. That roster's improved a little bit. Gannon's got them playing hard. Like,
he does.
I'm here in the desert. I live in Phoenix.
Right.
They are playing hard, and there's a little buzz going around that building right now about how the roster's coming together and trying to get into the playoffs this year. So it'll be interesting to see that. The Hawks at 9-8. I'm not sure I'm seeing regression. Now you just mentioned the idea of the national media and kind of everyone's kind of looking at Darnold versus Gino and having Metcalf gone and so forth. That's really not the way to look at it. Is how aligned is this offense to the vision of the head coach, and do the players fit into that better? And yes, the vision and the alignment of the scheme and the player fits are better now than they were before. So I see Seattle ascending and being better even than 10 wins last year. And last year we stumbled so much. I mean, the offense was shitty. Excuse my language. The offense was crap, and the defense was crappy for the first 8 weeks, right? The first 8 weeks, the defense was horrible, right? And so now if you're all together and you're playing better on both sides of the ball from the very beginning, Seattle's looking pretty good. And then the Rams and the 49ers, you can say what you want. Rams could be 11, they could be 9, they could be 12. We'll find out depending on the health of that team. It's getting older. That roster is older, except for the defensive line. The 49ers, they're not going to get 11 wins. Sorry.
No, Bill, it's funny. We always revert back to last year, and it's hard to not get frustrated, right? Like the whole Ryan Grubb situation. And then there was spots on that defense where they were running the ball down our throats early on, and so many things were inconsistent. I look at this offense as a whole, and I was a huge DK Metcalf supporter for a long time, a backer, and I just loved the physical nature of him. And I always had the hope that he could put it together, right? Like man, he's going to eventually win those, 50-50 or contested balls, or, come on, DK, just high point it. Like, you're going to get it this year. And it just never really got there. And, they tried to showcase him early on in the offense. Then you see the JSN emergence. Now that he's gone, and I still like the guy. I'll root for him in Pittsburgh, whoever's throwing him the football. But I look at it now, and I'm overall more excited about this offense. Obviously, I wanted Ryan Grubb out the door like a lot of people, and then I'm more excited about this coaching staff. But just the overall roster, and you look at, they want to run the ball consistently. You hope that's going to happen. And just like Bryce touched on, the overall route running is better. And I feel like overall, this offense as a whole is just going to be more complete. And I'm excited about that. Will I miss DK a little bit? And sure, he's a polarizing guy, but I think once we see how this offense operates, you're going to sort of like not forget about him, but it's, hey, I like what I'm seeing on the field. This is how I want to see an offense operate. So, I like where we're going here.
So speaking of the offense, here's another one from Gary over in the UK. He goes, offense, red zone efficiency will be much better than last season and will make a huge difference. That's something we didn't really touch on, but I 100% agree with Gary that Kubiak's offense and just as a whole, the weapons, the route running, everything combined this year, this offensive staff, the run game, we'll see a much more effective red zone offense, I think, than we've seen in the last few years. Even, the last real true great red zone offense, or I wouldn't say great, but good red zone offense really was Brian Schottenheimer's teams, that we had in 2020. And before we had a pretty good red zone offense. Shane Waldron, we didn't exactly have a great red zone offense to speak of. It'll be nice to have them where you can say, hey, we're inside the 20. There's a good chance we might come away with a touchdown here rather than, hey, let's hope we can get a field goal out of this.
Yeah, no doubt. And how about Robbie Oates for mayor? Because he's going to be leading the way this year. And there's going to be a lot of people that really like having a fullback and go out and buy his jersey, because he's going to be one of those guys where, he's not going to get a lot of snaps this year, but he could have 100 snaps to 150 snaps, and he's going to impact the game. Like it's going to be crazy how important that's going to end up being, I think, in the end, to our success on down there close to the goal line for sure.
So here's one of our other ones. Rockman Drums is in here. He goes, the final 53. The final 53 is going to be interesting, and with all of the young players fighting for a spot. Yeah, and Bill, you alluded to this, earlier. The roster projection shows for us are going to be very, very interesting this year, because I think truly we're talking about we don't know, and it's real. And this is the first time I can say in a long time, like, I am so excited for preseason to see, these guys play and see how this roster is going to take shape, because we know most of the guys, but it'll be those guys that are going to fill in that are going to be really interesting to see how they do.
Yeah, I think the camp battles, like at offensive guard, like behind Gray Zabel, we don't know. Like Christian Haynes, Lemea, Bradford, they're all going to be in competition for like a spot. And then you take a look at the tight end room, the wide receivers, fascinating to me. The running backs is going to be just fun. We probably know kind of how that's going to wash out, but it's going to be fun to watch. And then cornerback, are we going to go get like a Chico Griffith and Rasul Douglas? Is that going to be added to the room to make everyone feel a little better about going into the season with lack of depth there? And then watching the new players like Emanwari and Arroyo, how they fit in, and Milrow, the buzz is going to be around this kid. It's going to be hard for the team to control that, because I know that they want Sam Darnold to feel good and feel comfortable about being the guy, but everyone's going to be talking about Jalen Milrow. It's crazy.
Here's the last one we'll bring up here, and it's from Bob again. On a scale of 1 to 10, how weird will it be to play against Pete Carroll in the preseason Raider game? It'll be weird, I think, to a point, but I'm actually super excited. Pete's first game back in the NFL, regardless if it's regular season or preseason, is in Seattle, because I think he's going to get a massive, ovation from the fans and love from the fans, more so than we've seen for our other players that have left and come back to Seattle and played. Pete, to me, is the pinnacle of coaching in Seattle, and just That's the reality. Like, and yes, Seattle's had some really good coaches, but the impact Pete had throughout the community and everything with the Seattle team, like he is on his own kind of pedestal, I think, in some regards. And he left, and the more you hear about, like, I don't know, Bill, if you saw the 710 interview he did with Mike Salk and Brock Heward, but you could tell that Pete almost, really did kind of fall on the sword in a lot of ways and avoided it having to get worse and uglier. He fell on it, took the year, and now has gotten back. And I think there's a good chance that Raider team will be good in Vegas.
Yeah, no, I agree. I did see a little bit of that, and really kind of was graceful towards John Schneider, saying that John deserved his chance to lead a team. And yeah, as far as it being weird, no, it'll be a non-factor. It's a preseason game. Pete will get his ovation, and then it'll be football. I wish him well. I agree. He's like a first ballot Hall of Fame coach going into the Hall of Fame as a Seattle Seahawk. No matter really what happens, I think now, unless he wins like 3 straight Super Bowls or some crazy thing like that, he's going to be going in as a Seahawk, and it'll be just a fun sideshow, but really no effect.
Yeah, no, for sure. Standing ovation, no question about it. Yeah, this was good stuff, Bill. We appreciate you coming on. It's unfortunate Keith couldn't join us,
Sure.
but always.
I'm sorry about Keith. I'm not sure.
No,
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened there.
It's all good. It was an awesome conversation and talking with you here, and everybody that chimed in on the show live. It's been great. But Bill, before we get you out of here, why don't you let everybody know that watches our show what you got going on and where we can find your stuff?
Sure. Yeah, we're at Seahawks Playbook podcast. Been doing that for about 9 years now, Keith and I. And upcoming shows, we've got an entire series on position group players. So we're going to go through the entire roster and evaluate each of those groups and kind of highlight some areas we think are going to be some interesting camp battles to watch. So that'll be going on this summer. The doldrums of summer, we're going to cut back just a little bit on our production just until mid-July or so. One show a week. I think we usually do 2. And then we'll be back at it during the regular season. But I really appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk ball with you guys. It's always a great time. You guys do a super good job. So thank you.
We appreciate that, Bill. And guys, everybody go over to their channel, subscribe. We'll throw the links down in the description. So Bill, appreciate it again. And we'll talk to you soon in the future. And everybody else, thanks for watching today. And go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.